Welcome back to Patriot Network TV. It is a pleasure and a privilege to have with us today Charly Gullett, who's an old friend of mine. And you may remember we talked recently about the Gunrunner, Gunwalker, and Fast and Furious projects of the ATF. And we've done several episodes on that, and I referenced Charly in those episodes. I talked about my friend who had a gun shop who had straw buyers come in. Well, today Charly is publishing his own book describing, and it's called Beirut, Arizona, Operation Fast and Furious. And if you go to warfieldpress.com, we'll have the address at the bottom of the screen today, warfieldpress.com, you can buy Charly's book. So Charly, given that we've told him a little bit about Fast and Furious and Gunrunner, let's go into your book and what's in here, why you wrote it, and what these people need to know. What's the most important thing that American citizens need to know about what ATF did?
I think the most important thing is the part that's not being reported in the media today. We're hearing a lot on the news about ATF and DEA and ICE and their involvement in this, as well as FBI, who apparently had paid informants involved in the program who were employees of the drug cartels in Mexico. But the larger picture here that is not being reported is the connection between the Mexican drug cartels and Middle Eastern terrorists. And I document this pretty heavily in the book. I call it the Islamic Disconnect. The issue is that firearms which are manufactured in third world countries, including the old communist bloc countries and so forth, but these guns are in enormous numbers in the Middle East, particularly Syria and Iran, both of whom are sponsors of terror, both in the Middle East and in the United States. The two principal terrorist organizations that I document in here that are involved with the Mexican drug cartels are Hamas, which typically operate out of Palestine, and Hezbollah, which operates predominantly out of Syria with political backing and financial backing from Iran. They swap the guns that they have in the Middle East for access to Mexican drug cartel trails into Arizona. And in exchange for that, the drug cartels help them launder money that they take out of the United States, and the finances that are involved, and again this is in the book, the finances that are involved are coming from American mosques and Islamic community centers in the US, and the reason is that all Muslims who adhere to the tenets of Islam are required to produce something called zakat. Zakat is essentially cash donations. Cash donations under zakat are allowed to go to jihad. Consequently, the cash, which they cannot get out of the United States any other way, because essentially since 9/11 we've really tightened up the whole air, sea, and land travel deal. So in order to launder the money and get it out of the United States, they need these Mexican drug cartel trails through Arizona. And they have partnered in order to do this. So there's a trade for guns, for cash, for money, and it's an enormous operation. So to me, that's really the untold story here.
And the underlying part of this story, when you look at the immigration data, the frightening part about the border in Arizona, 140,000 illegals cross the border every month and have for the last 30 years. That's what we hear from the Center for Immigration Study. And at any given time, there's 600,000 people in the state of Arizona that are OTMs, other than Mexican. And that's what they admit to. And the idea...
Well, excuse me for interrupting, but they don't have anything else to admit to. Janet Napolitano, when she came into the Obama administration, shut that OTM report down so that that information was no longer available. Very problematic in terms of that. Secondly, one of the things that also has just started coming out relative to recent news stories in July was the involvement of the United States government in terms of the degree to which they were helping to traffic these firearms into Mexico. Yes, they trafficked a few thousand guns into Mexico using Arizona gun dealers, but this was a drop in the bucket compared to what was being transferred to the government, or excuse me, they're almost the same thing, to the government or the Mexican drug cartels as a result of this Middle Eastern connection. But the United States government themselves are complicit in this. Through Hillary Clinton's State Department, they have been providing annual sales of large-scale munitions to Mexico and other governments, and a lot of this stuff is frankly stolen or transferred and given over to the drug cartels. And the comparison is huge. They do not even measure these guns in numbers, they measure them in tons of transfers that are going on. I mean, it's really huge.
Well, now isn't there some overlap on the databases too? Isn't there access to foreign police departments to American databases to understand who American gun owners are?
Yes.
Wasn't that one of the issues that you originally came upon?
Yeah, and you know, I talk quite a bit in the book. I have a whole chapter called E-Trace, which is the name of the principal firearms tracing program that ATF uses. Since we talked in the spring, I've discovered there are two other tracing programs that ATF uses. One of them is the suspect gun database, and the third one is called Armas Cruzadas. Armas Cruzadas is a portal that allows the Mexican government and other Spanish-speaking countries access to information on American citizens' firearm purchases. And there are currently over 30 foreign countries that they have distributed this access to. Some of them are innocent and some of them are not.
You know, for our viewers, make clear what this means. This means if you're a bought and paid for corrupt police officer in Mexico and you want to cross over into Tucson and assassinate a citizen, you can look up whether or not they own a gun. Is it?
In some cases, yes. It's not completely obvious to us how much information they have access to at this point. But ATF has for years thumbed their nose at federal laws which have required them to destroy transaction information of American citizens and protect their privacy. And they literally have thumbed their nose at this law for years. So it's unclear how much they have collected, but they have an enormous database. They started collecting the paper on this stuff in 1968, I believe, and there are decades and decades of this background paperwork. Every time a gun store goes out of business, they are required to turn over all of the transaction information, which includes your name, address, your birth date, what type of firearm by serial number, by caliber, by model. All of this information is available to the ATF in various aspects, and a lot of it, we don't know at this point how much, but a lot of it has been transferred into these databases, which they have now given foreign countries access to that information, and that's very problematic in and of itself. But it's not the first time that there has been collusion between the United States government and foreign operatives. This document that I brought with me is an appendix in the book and demonstrates that there was a specific agreement between the United States and the Sinaloa cartel to provide them guns and information in exchange for a get-out-of-jail card for moving all the cocaine they wanted to into the United States.
And that's between the Department of Justice. That was a deal between the Department of Justice and the Sinaloa cartel.
DEA and ICE specifically, who do report to DOJ.
Alrighty, folks, you got to read this book. We've talked to you about Gun Runner, Gunwalker, and Fast and Furious. You need to have all the information on this, and you need to realize your privacy has been breached, your safety has been breached, and not only was the intent of this program originally to take away your Second Amendment rights and further dilute Second Amendment rights, the absolute effect of it, not only did it murder Agent Terry, not only did it murder Jaime Zapata, it has left us more vulnerable to the worst thugs in North America. And it is an absolute travesty. You got to get Beirut, Arizona. Go to warfieldpress.com and read Charly Gullett's new book. Charly, thanks for being here. As usual, you're a great patriot. God bless you, and God bless the United States.